there's a time management piece, right, of like you being able to do 60-40 in your work and business.
Yeah.
But then there's this like fun aspect, which is like you have a wine company.
Yes.
And so like, do you ever get a chance to like just kick back and sip? How did you figure out this is how I need to set my life up in order to make this work?
Trial and error. There is no perfect science to it. You know, it took me doing the traditional, like, okay, I'm going to work my 8 to 5, and then I'm going to come home, and then I'm going to go and do like 7 to 10, you know, like I started that didn't work. Because if with my job right now, actually, we work 6 hours.
Okay.
So
that's not bad.
It's not. I love it. 7 a.m. and then 6 p.m. and then that's Monday through Thursday, which is great. So I would, you know, kind of have my Fridays.
That's lit.
So Fridays was my wine day. Like Fridays, I try to make up for everything that I couldn't get done in the afternoon. But you know, to be fair and to be realistic, you have your business, you have your job, and you still have a life.
So I know that you'll agree, enjoying myself while I work is the vibe that I'm trying to be on. So I want to invite you guys to Sidebar ATL here in Atlanta, Georgia. Sidebar, on top of the good food and live music, they have 3 different experiences. That means you can join me in the garden room, in the gold room if you want to try the top of the line hookah, and they also have the dungeon where I hear what happens in the dungeon stays in the dungeon. So it's the perfect mix. If you're here on business or you want to blow off some steam after work, you can meet me at Sidebar ATL so that you can have a little bit of dinner and then turn up afterwards if that's your jam. So check us out, 79 Poplar Street here in downtown Atlanta, or you can call 678-800-0741. Let's get it. Work and play at the same time, right? Welcome to another episode of the Work and Play Podcast. I'm your host, Ariel Young, and I have a really, really special guest today, Miss Nicole Anderson.
Hello.
Hey. I said special guest because, one, we've had brands on the podcast, Wine and Spirits brand, but not a black girl, not a black girl wine and spirits lady.
That makes me so excited.
You are amazing for doing what you're doing, and so I'm really ready to tell your story.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Let's get into it. So on the podcast, we talk about life transitions, self-actualization, career transitions. And so for folks who are listening, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes. Wow. So I'm Nicole Anderson. I am the proud owner of Her Wine. Her Wine is actually an acronym. It stands for Having Evolved Repeatedly.
Come on.
Yes. The idea is that we're constantly on this, you know, growth and evolution of becoming better versions of ourselves. Yes. And I wanted a wine that spoke to those moments and was there for the journey of us as we continue to grow.
That is beautiful.
Thank you.
Tell me again. I know the evolving, it caught me, but tell me HER.
Having evolved repeatedly.
Having evolved repeatedly.
Yes.
There was a moment in my life where I changed my Instagram to, what was it? Evolving arsenal of thought.
Ooh, I like that.
Because we are always evolving. Like our thoughts are evolving. We have to be able to accept the new self, right?
Yes.
And I think that's actually a really big part of actualization, self-discovery.
So true.
So for you, like, how did you get into your first pivot? One.
Yes.
So you are currently on your transition into entrepreneurship, right?
I am, yes. I'm in that weird, like, in-between phase, like one foot in, one foot out. So I'm in marketing. I manage marketing for creative services for a major company here in Atlanta, Acuity Brands. And it's been a phenomenal journey. I've been with that company for about 4 years. I've been doing marketing since I could remember, like over 10 years professionally, but before that I was doing marketing in different capacities. And it's been amazing, but it is a transition period now.
I want to get into that because a lot of people are, you know, either already on the other side or they're still trying to figure out how are they going to make that leap. So for you, how would you like embody this evolution process that you would call right now?
It's interesting. So the funny thing is when I started out, like coming out of college, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, right? I knew I was going to be someone's CMO, Chief Marketing Officer for somebody's business.
Come on.
I was ready. I said, I'm going to be an executive, you know, like I'm coming out of college, like ambitious and ready to go. And I did. You know, entrepreneurship was something that I knew I wanted to do, but I never found like my thing. So my focus was climbing the corporate ladder. And I did. You know, I was super fortunate. My career path has been really, really great so far. And it's funny because when you hit the level that you think that you want to achieve, and you're still like, I'm not feeling fulfilled, like there's still something missing. That's when, you know, I was like, okay, I think that transition needs to happen a little bit sooner. And her wine definitely came, you know, a little bit before that, but it's just interesting, you know, kind of being able to now be here. I manage like a major team. Like I've had this leadership experience, and still yet I'm like, I want to be an entrepreneur. Like I'm ready to just let this go and jump into, you know, entrepreneurship. So it's an interesting kind of place to be in, to evolve and to transition and pivot and decide midstream, you know, like, hey, I think instead of climbing this ladder and keeping forward, I think I'm going to focus on me and build my empire.
Now, you mentioned like climbing the corporate ladder, and I think a lot of us, you know, I come from corporate, so like at some point that was definitely an aspiration of mine. If you were to think about like what you'd be leaving behind, and you making that decision like, hey, I want something different, what was that struggle like for you? You know, stability, the check, like those things are major pieces. That consistent check is real. It feels really good. However, you know, there's other things that you sacrifice. Like I mentioned earlier, like that feeling of fulfillment. There's something that's said to be about when you build something, like taking something from thought to fruition to actual product, and then being able to share it. Like it's, I don't have kids yet, but it's like giving birth essentially. Yes, absolutely. You know, and so there's a lot of pride that goes into it. It's scary. It's a lot of risks that you have to take, but it's so rewarding when you start to see that it's received well and people like it and people are buying it. Not only just they like it, but people are willing to pay their hard-earned money for what you built. Like that is what's cool. Speaking of which, I'm thinking about a lot of the marketers that I know. And like the evolution of a marketer starts like, so marketing a product or service essentially is what I know from outside looking in, right? Marketers do. But there's that creativity, and a lot of like people that I've talked to along the way are like, well, if I don't have something or someone to like place my creativity on, then I can't necessarily express myself. So growing up in marketing for 10 years, did you have that same feeling where before you had her, right, you didn't necessarily have your own product, but did you feel like you had to have a product or service to like express your creativity? You know, it's interesting. I didn't. And I think that's because for me with marketing, I feel like there's different, marketing is such a huge, you know, kind of category, right? And for me, I've always been more on the operation side. So my outlets for creativity, I didn't necessarily create things. Like I wasn't a painter on the side or anything like that. I can't draw for anything. Don't ask me to do it. But I found joy in creating like flyers and creating business cards for people, and just the creative. For me, it was more so the creative process of helping people to understand consumer behavior. Like that was interesting when people are like, how do I get my product to market? That part was like how I would express my creativity. The strategy. Yes, the strategy. That's more where I kind of like found my sweet spot. And so for me, I would help other businesses, like, you know, just completely like, hey, you want to just bounce ideas off of me about how to help your business grow? Hell yeah, let's go for it. You know? Let's do it. We can talk about this all day. So that's really like how I was able outside of work to do it. And so creating something myself was really interesting because that was a new arena for me. I have an eye for it. You know, I can tell if something's going to work or not work. But me physically creating it, you don't want me to. Y'all don't want me to do that. Listen, I had a sip of the wine before we actually started the podcast, so I know it's actually amazing. So I can't wait to get into like the story of how the different layers, no pun intended, came to be like right here and right now. And that makes sense. I have a homegirl who's a strategist, a marketing strategist. And I understand more and more that like marketing and advertising has different like perspectives to it, right? You have the creative side, you have the copy side, you have the strategy side, and then you have like the actual, like the mediums in which you put it out there, right? The channels put out there, exactly. And I guess that's how I've come to understand marketing, right? What would you say is your sweet spot? Do you like the digital side of marketing? Do you like what part of the strategy are you like, oh, let me help you here? Yeah, you know, I love, so it's a little bit of both, right? I love being able to look at a product and say, okay, I think that you should, and tell me your problem, right? So it's not just give me your product, like there's always a problem that we have and there's a solution that we're looking for. So let's say someone has
or even just, you know, with what we do today with my corporate job, we sell light fixtures.
Okay.
And so we're constantly trying to understand who our target audience is and how do we get in front of them. So I like that part, you know, like I like trying to really understand if I am targeting a black woman, right, with my product, then how do I, like, what type of black, because black women come in all these different shapes and sizes, we all like different things, but even outside of that, we still kind of fall into categories, right? And so if someone was trying to sell a product, and let's say it's a hair product, we'll use that as an example. So there's a hair product that they're trying to sell, and they're trying to sell it to black women. Like the part that I get excited about is to help them decipher who that person is, and then take it a few steps back. Now we know who it is. Now we can get to how do we target that person? What are her triggers, her motivations? What keeps her up at night? You know, like what about her hair is bothering her? And that's how you kind of fit your product into the solution for that person. So I like the strategy side of really trying to help people to position their products appropriately in front of the right audience, and doing so in an effective way through the mediums of which that target audience is going to receive it.
Yes, I like how you broke that down.
I love
you smooth,
sis. That's what's up, girl. All day, I love it.
You are really smooth.
Thank you.
Coming from a data perspective, like you really, like you talk that talk.
Thanks.
Like, and as new entrepreneurs, you know, the biggest word is your target audience. Who's your avatar?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I am so, my biggest shell shock as an entrepreneur was to realize that I was leaving behind so much data in corporate and going into entrepreneurship. Like, okay, I'm relying on different, like, you know, Instagram statistic, YouTube statistic. I'm understanding who my avatar is, I would say subjectively through blogs, like these resources. And I'm getting clear on who she is and how can I help, what's her problem, right? For your like what you do in corporate and outside, right? What's the next step? Once you understand their triggers, you understand she likes music soul child. She doesn't like Taylor Swift. She knows exactly that she just got into a relationship. She's not necessarily, you know what I mean? Like once you get clear on it, what are some of the strategies you use in corporate, and then what are some of those like other strategies as entrepreneurs that they may or may not be leveraging? So
I think that's really interesting, right? Like knowing what that person is, and then sometimes and this is the hard part, to be honest, like putting yourself in the position of that person. So once you know what their likes and dislikes are, that's the first step. Data is king in marketing right now. I think back in the day it was a lot more of a how you feel and stuff looks good. If it looks good, people buy it. But now we've evolved, technology has evolved, and we can get real data. So now we have these things like, you know, cookies. That's the simple one that we all know. So you go on a site, I immediately have information on you completely now, right? Like I can track where you go, I can track where, you know, after you leave me, what sites you've gone on. So now I can come to you and meet you where you are. That's what you want to do as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a marketer. I want to meet the consumer where they are. So I think once you know what their likes and interests are, then now if you know this person likes music soul child, well then you know they probably like concerts. And so then you need to put your products at concerts. You know, like can you do pop-ups, or maybe you need to host events that have soulful music to draw in those people. You know, I think once you know what their interests are, you can get a little bit more creative in thinking about how to draw those people in or to meet them where they are. So that's why, you know, the whole idea of doing like a spray approach and trying to target everybody, it doesn't work. Your product is not going to be for everybody. That's a harsh reality for us. It really is. Because we want it for everybody. Like you think it's amazing, so you're like, everybody's going to love this. But even with my wine, like I have a lot of times where people will come and they're like, oh, you know, like it's they don't like sweet wine. They're not gonna like my product, you know what I mean? And so I have to be comfortable in that my product is a great product and I love it, and there are other women like me, but I have to understand that it's not for everybody. That's really good. You're right. I have conversations almost every other day with a new or aspiring entrepreneur who are like, okay, so who do you want to target? Really everybody. You know what I mean? And when we're coming from corporate, you know that, you know, there are
segmented markets based on data. You got your premium client, you got your, but I think as new entrepreneurs, we want that up front.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like we want the premium client, we want the, and like you gotta get to know your core audience first.
Exactly. Build your base. Build your base. That's the first step.
Would you say that's what you're doing right now with your brand?
Absolutely. Like my brand is interesting, right? So like we were talking before the show, this brand is not necessarily for the wine connoisseur. You know, like I don't necessarily have to have someone that needs to come to me and know what legs mean when we're talking about that. You know, and I tell people like wine is what you want it to be. That's really what it is. If it tastes good to you, then it's good. You know, because they're like, well, you know, how do you know if it's good or bad wine?
Absolutely. Like we get caught up in the how it's supposed to be.
Yes.
And if it's not like how high society likes it or whoever the market is, and it's like, oh, then, you know, this must be wrong.
Right. And that's not the case at all. And you'll hear even a lot of wine connoisseurs will even tell you like, yes, they may know, you know, the region where that grape came from and, you know, all of the ins and outs of where that particular bottle was made. And that's great. But for me and for my base, that's not what we're looking for. We want a good glass of wine that is a premium product. You know, it's not going to be your $5 wine. It's going to be a good quality product, but it's going to get you to feel good. That's I'm in the business of making people feel good. I think that's really what you have to think about. Knowing your why. That's the biggest takeaway for any marketer. Know your why.
You know, I think about, so of course I want to get into your story. And I'm thinking about like evolution, right? Yeah. And where you are in life right now. As it relates to your why, or if it does or doesn't, like where would you say you are in terms of like your balance or your mesh between work and play?
Whew. Balance? What is that? Is that a word? Is that a thing? No, I'm actually in a very interesting space right now where I'm transitioning more. So pandemic was amazing for me because it allowed my company to see that we can work from home. And so now I work from home permanently, which was the best thing that could have happened for my brand because it allows me to multitask a little bit more. So my balance now is I probably do about, it depends on the day, but it's a good like 60-40, like 60 still on work, but I now can do a lot more in between times, so in between meetings, or you know, like I can take half a day and just say, you know, I'm having you know, a work session and I can work on my wine, you know, like I have opportunities now to balance a little bit more and or at least include my wine a little bit more in my day-to-day activities, and that has been a really great thing, but it's a constant juggle.
You said balance.
Right. I was like, I don't know if that exists yet, but working on it.
The way you answered, I kind of want to ask you from like two different angles. There's a time management piece, right, of like you being able to do 60-40 in your work and business. Yeah. But then there's this like fun aspect, which is like you have a wine company, and so like, do you ever get a chance to like just kick back and sip and relax, kind of like how your target audience will? Yeah. So it's kind of a twofold. Let's go with the time management first. Like, how did you figure out this is how I need to set my life up in order to make this work?
Trial and error. Trial and error. There is no perfect science to it. You know, it took me doing the traditional like, okay, I'm going to work my 8 to 5 and then I'm going to come home and then I'm going to go and do like 7 to 10, you know, like I started that didn't work because with my job right now, actually we work 6 hours. So
that's not bad.
It's not. I love it. 7 a.m. and then 6 p.m. and then that's Monday through Thursday, which is great. So I would, you know, kind of have my Fridays.
That's lit.
So Fridays was my wine day. Like Fridays, I try to make up for everything that I couldn't get done in the afternoon. But you know, to be fair and to be realistic, you have your business, you have your job, and you still have a life.
Are you still trying to get a leg up on your entrepreneurial career? Now, I told you about the Morning Meetup, the community that was created for the betterment of entrepreneurship. And we are cooking up some really cool things. Now, here's the thing. If you join today, you can actually get in for 60% of the original price. So if you join today, all you have to do is download the app, and I provided the link below so that you can join us. We have community, we have a book club, and it's the largest group that meets every single day, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. to literally get a head start on entrepreneurship. So if you're still trying to grow, you don't know what your business is going to be, but you know you want to be an entrepreneur, this is the community for you. So check out the morning meetup, click the link below, download the app, and join us today.
Trying to find time for all those things. There were some times where it was like, oh, my girls are like, let's go out, and I'm like, I gotta do this stuff for my wine business. Like, I really need to stay home and I need to focus, but it's so beautiful outside. Do I want to just go to this happy hour? You know, like that constant tug. So the time thing, it really fluctuated until being able to stay at home now. I can kind of intertwine it into my day, you know, so it's not so structured like, okay, after, you know, 7 o'clock, it's done. But I did come up with a schedule. So that was a big thing for me. So I would say, like, okay, because I had to actually like make time for life too, make time for fun. So I was like, okay, Mondays and Wednesdays, I'm gonna work. Like, you know, after I get off, like, that's gonna be my time.
Got you.
Don't hit me up, y'all. I can't go. No, I want to, yes, but no. Like, I gotta. This is my day. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're open. So if I had something to do and I wanted to do it, cool. If not, then, you know, or I just decompress and not do anything, because you still have to have those moments. But I actually had to get a little bit more structured with that. And then Fridays, of course, I dedicated more of my 8 to 5 time to wine, and then still, you know, could start my weekend.
Love it. I love it. So I think we have a really dope perspective and picture of like where you are in your life and your business. And honestly and truly, this chapter sounds dope.
It's fun. It's a lot of work. It's busy. Ooh, it's busy.
Word.
Yes. I feel that. But there's a whole
and you know what, honestly and truly, after looking at where she is right now in her life, you like, dang, you gotta appreciate the time that she spent doing the things that she loves. And honestly, like with your brand, it can be fun. I'm assuming, like, working on some of the things that you like to do.
Yeah, it is. It is. You know, I think as an entrepreneur, when you're kind of in that position of deciding like what that thing is that you want to go for, you have to have that passion for it, because it does take up so much of your like extra time that we have, your free time. So I think you have to be passionate about it. It has to be fun for you in order for you not to feel like, you know, it's another job. You don't want that.
Essentially, like you basically create a baby that you don't like.
And
I need to like my
I gotta get this thing through college, but dang, I'm done. You know, you don't want that. You want to be like, this is my thing. I love you.
Exactly. You know, to go to college in a good way.
You got a 5-year-old, you like plotting for them to turn 18. Like, I can't wait. Like, you don't want that.
Listen, from one single woman to the other, you got to choose the right baby, right? You mentioned that you have been a marketer through and through from the beginning. So, like, if we go back to young Nicole, when did you first decide? Like, what were your projects like when you were in high school, or when did you notice the mindset that you were like, I think I want to be a marketer?
So it was a really cool story. So when I was 13, my parents moved to Lithonia, and I ended up moving to next door to this lady. Her name is Miss Tiffany. Shout out to Miss Tiffany. She's amazing. And it was so funny. She's just like this big ball of energy, and she was a clown, a professional clown. So my very first job, I was a clown assistant.
Are you
working
serious?
With her? Yes, it was so funny. Like, and imagine, right? So you got a 13-year-old who's like, and she dresses up and she does the whole thing, right? And her thing was, she's a black woman, and her thing was, you know, she wanted to show. She didn't like paint her face all up and stuff. Like, she wanted to show her black skin, because you needed representation, right? So so it was interesting, because she would need business cards, and she would make flyers, and we would, you know, go out. And so one day I was like, I can make a flyer, and I just played around on her computer and put something. She was like, oh my gosh, like, I love this. And I was like, really? Okay. And, you know, so I did that. And then she started a real estate company called Two Tough Cookies. And I created this logo for her. Now, mind you, I'm doing this on like Paint and PowerPoint. And it's like, looking back on it now, I'm like, what in the world was I creating? But it worked.
Yeah.
She loved it. They used it for their business, letterheads and everything. And I didn't know that that was marketing, though. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. So it wasn't until high school, when they make you take those aptitude tests to figure out like where you want to go for college and your major. It wasn't until I did that, and I put it all together, and it popped out marketing, and I was like, what is marketing? And then that, you know, like I said, oh, this is exactly what I want to do. Like, this looks fun. And took it and ran with it.
I'm still blown away by this 12-year-old who created a whole like logo for a company.
Yeah.
Because even when you say like, you know, when I look back, you know, it's one thing to look back at it and it be on your mom's, you know, refrigerator. Yeah. But it's another thing to look back and be like, oh no, this is actually something. And someone went on to make money
with it. Yes, that's so true.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So like as a clown's assistant, what are some of the things like you learned from that first job? 12 years old, right?
Yeah. You know, the interesting thing that I learned about that is, one, I can actually still make a balloon animal, so that is still a weird like skill set that I picked up. But it really taught me the importance of truly like being authentic, being your authentic self. Like watching Miss Tiffany, I think I met her at the most pivotal point in my life. You know, this is when I'm transitioning from being, you know, like a little girl into like a teenager, and seeing her confidence, seeing like how open she was, like her personality really captivated a room, and she was able to somehow keep the attention of all of these kids at any given time. But just watching even her interact with, when she would take me to networking events with her, you know.
I'm thinking of this is such great like internship experience.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It was. You know, looking back at it, it really was.
And you're 12, right? So, you know, speaking of evolutions, right?
Yeah.
You're going from, was it prepubescent to puberty?
Right.
You have this woman who's already showing up in her full self.
Yes.
And you get to like basically follow her around all day.
That was it. Every weekend. And she paid me really good so you know, at a young age, like I think she gave me, maybe it was like $25 an hour, and it would be like 2-3 hours, but like $50, that was a lot.
For a 12-year-old, you can go, and at that time, because I want to say like cell phone bills are probably like $35 back in the day.
Yeah, so, right. So I really could have, right?
Flexing on everybody, that would have been amazing.
Yes.
I think that's a dope experience for anyone at any age. But because a lot of us like who are growing up, we don't have a lot of like good examples.
That's true.
So one, though, it was your neighbor. You also have your parents, right?
Yeah.
So like, were your parents not nonprofits, but entrepreneurs or?
Yeah. So okay, funny story. So I'm gonna take it back even further.
Let's go.
My very first entrepreneur venture, I was the candy lady. So I was like, I probably was like 9 years old. We were at this apartment. I turned our little like balcony into like this little setup, and so people would come inside. They had, you know, I had everything set up. I would go to Sam's with my mom, and we would like go buy bulk chips and candy and everything. I have this like funny picture of me and my friend, because it was another neighbor girl, and we did it together, and we just have all these $1 bills, and we're smiling, you know, like we made all this money. It was so funny. So it started out as that, and I bring that up because my parents have always instilled in me and my little brother that entrepreneurship is the route and the key to freedom. Whether that's financial freedom, whether it's time freedom, they always taught us like that is the goal.
Yeah.
And so that's why I said I always knew I wanted to do entrepreneurship, just not to what capacity and how.
Okay.
Now my parents have both had several entrepreneurial ventures that they've dabbled in. My dad has a photo booth company here in Atlanta that's really big and doing great. And so being able to see them, you know, partner together, have their own, like watching that growth, it was always inspiring. So I always had that. But my dad still has his own job. So he still works and does his photo booth business.
Gotcha.
So he's excited to see me kind of get to a place where I can, you know, kind of cut that tie and officially jump in full time.
Okay, that's interesting, because I was gonna say, like, growing up, then you saw it work.
Yeah.
You know, like you saw the 9 to 5 and the 6 to 10, so to speak, right? You saw it work. But then it's also interesting to hear that your dad is like excited to see you cut the cord. And don't you think it's funny, like parents always want you to go like the next step,
level,
right?
Yeah.
Like, yes, I did this, but I think you should do that. And a lot of people don't even have parents who are entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Why is it that you think that your dad wants you to go into full time? I mean, you already mentioned they stressed, you know, the freedom that comes with entrepreneurs, like the socioeconomic freedom that comes with it. What other reasons do you think he's like, you know what, I'm ready for you to cut that cord, even though he hasn't?
I think it comes with, you know, when you get your business to a certain place and being able to feel comfortable enough to jump in, you know, like I think he sees it and he sees the vision with me. And I think that's really important when you have people in your corner, whether it's your parents or just anybody really, that sees that vision with you. I think that's a big piece of it. But I think he sees that, you know, like, she's living her dream, you know, like I've been talking about this for years, and now, you know, it's like she's in it. This is her dream being realized. And I think that's the pride that they get from seeing me kind of build this business. And I mean, I started out making wine myself. So
you were doing it yourself?
Yeah.
We got to go there. Yeah. How did you get the inkling, one, to make your own wine? And then what did you do? Like,
I know. So I always was like weird, and I love science. Like I was definitely that person. I definitely went to science camp, guys. Like that was a thing. I was that girl. So
with the little pigtail, I was like, listen, guys, I'm ready.
I'm going to. I literally went to space camp. Oh my gosh. So so it was funny because my love for wine has started like as soon as I could legally drink. I was like, give me a wine cooler. Where's the wine? Everyone's taking shots of tequila. And I'm like, pass me the wine. I'm good, right? And so my love for wine has always been there. But I got to a place, and this was interesting. 2018, 2019, really, well, 2017, 2018 were really interesting years for me. There was a lot of, to your point, life transitions that were happening at that point for me. One of which was that I got bored with wine. Like I would go to the store and I was like, you know, I keep buying the same bottles and I try other brands, and you know, I just got bored with it. And I was like, none of these wines speak to me either. So I decided like I wanted to try, and I just random Google search. I was like, I wonder if I can make my own. Like I want to try different flavor wines. Like there's got to be something else. And this was actually before we had Stella Rosa that kind of like grew up, and you know, we started seeing a little bit more of like the flavored wines. It was really like you had
and Moscato, right? When did Moscato come out?
Moscato's been around forever, but it became really big kind of 2008. Like a lot of our Black community, we really heard it in songs and stuff. Like we were really into Moscato. Yeah. And so that was the thing, right? It was like you had red Moscato, pink Moscato, regular Moscato. Like I was like, I'm Moscatoed out, you know? Like and the flavors just, I was getting ready for something else. And so I found there's a facility here in Georgia, in Decatur, and it's like a home brewing thing. They really kind of cater to beers, but they also have wine. And so I got this kit, and it's like a little mad scientist, and I'm putting it together and whipping it up, and you know, like that's really what taught me about wine. I've been doing, you know, going to wine tours and stuff forever.
Wow.
So being able to like listen and hear it, and then make my own, and then go to other, and then again go back to wine tours and hear how they make it. Like it made it make sense. Yeah. And I think that knowledge, that base knowledge, helped me to kind of ease into this, because I can talk a little bit more to the winemakers that are blending my wines about, you know, what I want and how I want it, and I understand when they're telling me like what
can or cannot be done.
Exactly.
The best way to support the Work and Play podcast is by subscribing to the YouTube channel, and by going to your favorite podcast player to subscribe and rate the Work and Play podcast. That's all you have to do. So if you are liking the Work and Play podcast, the content, the stories that we're sharing, and you know that this will help someone, go ahead and share the content to someone who could actually use it and help them on their journey to transition from corporate into entrepreneurship. Now let's get back into the episode. This is so interesting because you started a wine company, and I will try to articulate why I'm so blown away, because you like wine, you were a wine drinker, and then you said, you know what, I want to make my own after getting bored.
Yeah.
I don't know not a one wine facility, and you know what, this might be my lack of resourcefulness,
no.
But you really found a way to learn. Like, what was your first idea? It was, you know, like, let me Google a facility that makes it, but then like, how did you go about, you know, taking the first steps to just explore this inkling of an idea?
You know, it's YouTube. Like I would literally just watch people on YouTube making wine. Okay. And honestly, it was a lot of like just old white men that were making wines in their backyards, you know, and stuff like that. But it was seeing that and seeing like, oh, this is this is actually not that hard. And actually, it was funny because I was going to do it at my actual house, but I didn't have all the space. So because you have to let those containers kind of sit for at least 30 days, depending on the sweetness of the wine.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, so I found this facility that allowed me to use their equipment and just rent it out versus me having to buy all that, try and house it in my garage. I was like, you know, I'd rather take it, you know, do it there versus having all this equipment. And then I figured, honestly, I was like, eventually I'll transition my garage into a little area and do it that way. That was honestly the idea. I was just gonna build my way up into making my own wines. But then I realized, and that's kind of what really inspired the brand itself, I wanted a wine that spoke to the reason why we wine. You know, each of the names of the wines like actually speak to the reasons why, because we're drinking for a purpose. It's I'm in my feelings, or it's girls' night in, you know, mama needs a break, finally after 5. Like all of those were different experiences and reasons why, and that's what I wanted. I wanted people to go into a store and be able to see a label and be like, yes, mama needs a break, let me get that, you know, while their kids are running around on the aisle, you know what I mean? She just sees it and she's like, yeah, let me grab that, you know, like that's the vision that I had, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to create something that spoke to us. And also, there are not a lot of Black winemakers, like Black wine brands. We as Black women are major consumers of wine, and yet, you know, at the time, this was even before the McBride sisters, when I was like really doing the research and looking it up for myself. I literally was Googling like Black women wines. I saw like one that weren't celebrities. That was another thing too, you know, like I wanted to find like an everyday woman that just built this and didn't come and have a bunch of money, wasn't a lawyer that, you know, like
just slapped her name on it. You actually went from the beginning in the kitchen, cooking it up,
chefing it up.
And then you got the vision for your brand. So how long was it between where you finally like got the like recipes in order, you're making wine, and then you getting your vision for like the actual brand?
Man, so this was the funny thing. This was the reality check, right? So I started out, so I'm making this wine myself, and I have a soft launch, a wine tasting. And I rented out this really cute spot on Peter Street. It was like an art gallery, and I had every wine had its own station, its own vibe, and I just invited, and it was so cool. I invited my friends and family, and it was a paid event. I had like live jazz. It was a whole vibe, photo booth, courtesy of my dad. So we had like food, everything. And that was in 2018. So that was like November of 2018. And I was like, the feedback was so great. People were buying tickets to come to even people I didn't know, you know, had came out and bought tickets to come to this event. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, wow, like people are here. And then of course, like you dig into it, and Uncle Sam is like, yeah, you can't sell your wine that you made yourself like, legally. So then it's like, all right, so now I have to get the permits and, you know, go through the red tape of creating a wine. And that process took a while, you know. I actually officially launched this September 2020. So during the pandemic, you know, up until that point, so, you know, November 2018, I have this thing, you know, I have created these wines, I'm excited, I'm selling bottles, donations. People are donating for these bottles, for the experience, right. And then 2019, I spent a lot of 2019 trying to understand how to officially get in and create this and build it. But life is still going on at the same time. I was going through a divorce at that time. I was trying to figure out, you know, I had just got a promotion at that time. So there was like
highs and lows
at the same time. And so trying to balance that in, still, you know, working on this on the side. So it wasn't a major priority. But I kept telling people, like, when they asked me, what do you do? And I would say, yeah, I do marketing and I have a wine, you know, like I was always speaking about it. And so then we get to 2020 and we're stuck in the house, right? And I was like, okay, we need to make something shake. Like, let's use this time, because I'm single, I'm living by myself, I have nothing but time, can't go nowhere, you know, like that was the perfect opportunity to remove distractions so I could tap in. And that's exactly what I did. Like I was able to, in that short period of time from March to September, secure a winery, get all the permits that I needed. I made so much movement that, you know, in a few months than what I did in like a year and a half.
Exactly, because it was just a hobby at first. And then you got really, really clear and really, really serious to put everything in place to just get everything done.
Yes.
Now, was there anyone, and it's crazy because like the divorce and the promotion happened at the same time. What is your like circle looking like, and who's that person or people who's like helping you through this process?
Man, you know, I'm so fortunate to have a really strong circle. You know, I have a great group of girlfriends that are super supportive. My parents, of course, are there. So I really was able to build that community. But I'll tell you, so previously, before when I was going through divorce, I was in Snellville, right? I moved and bought my condo in the city, and that was the best thing that I could have done, because the energy in Atlanta is so contagious. You know, you've got hustlers out here, people who are just grinding, who are ambitious, and I was super fortunate in my building to befriend a lot of my neighbors, and they had their own businesses, and that was their full-time thing, successful business owners, and they expanded my network to introduce me to more entrepreneurs, and just being around like-minded people, that really lit the spark under me, because living in the burbs, it's family stuff, you know, like this could have continued to be a hobby. Fact. It really could have.
And you're a go-getter, like you said, the energy, you look around, you're just like, oh, they're on their laptop getting business together, they're on there. It just makes you like, you know what, let me get my
computer, let me get right.
Right. And what I really love about this part of your life is that you, again, live around some really cool people. Yeah. Right? Just like you were living next door to the clown, to your, I want to say to the clown.
I know, but she was,
she was. But then your network of entrepreneurs grew. Yeah. Growing up in corporate, what was it like for you to like develop your network or your professional brand before you actually became an entrepreneur?
You know, that was something I was very intentional about. So even in college, like I was a big advocate for getting internships. I had the opportunity to work for Kaiser Permanente, Arby's. I worked for small companies. I worked for large companies. I was really intentional on working that network. And even when I got into, and it was something that I had to learn too. So I will say that going through corporate, I had to learn to be my authentic self, not be the Nicole they wanted me to be. There was a lot of times throughout my career where I was the only black woman in that space. At one point, I was the only black woman in the company. So I had to figure out who I was and not mute myself, but also be able to show up, because I realized in a lot of those times I was going to be the only black person a lot of these people interacted with at all. If, you know, like in an actual, like having conversation, you know? So it wasn't until I started to really allow my personality to shine and just show up as me and just being just, you know, like a ball of energy and sunshine. That's what I wanted, you know? Like I just wanted to be the positive ray of sunshine, and that's really the stamp that I got. If you talk to any of my colleagues at any other like job, they all say the same thing. Nicole's all smiles and she's so sweet and nice. But I did that intentionally, and I learned this from listening to, it was a podcast. I forget the gentleman's name, but he owns the Weather Channel. He's a black guy.
Oh, I don't know.
I can't remember his name. I feel so bad. But he was talking about his story and his grind, and he was talking about, you know, the importance of being a servant to others. And so I would go into any new job, and I was a typical millennial, like seriously, like if I didn't like a job after a certain point, I'm hopping. Like,
oh my goodness.
Every year and a half, I had a new job. And it was always upward, you know, moving up, but I was out. So
I love it.
I'm not.
I want to ask you so much, but we're going to get there, because I want to go there actually.
Yeah.
But then I want to know the story.
Yeah, so I'm listening to him, right? And he's talking about being a servant. And so I was very intentional going in and doing the dirty jobs.
Got you.
Like I would ask my managers, you know, like, what do you need? I would network outside of my community too, and go to other, you know, places, and if they needed something, you know, just trying to figure out within my role how I can help others. And sometimes I was doing stuff I didn't really want to do, but that's what helped me. Even me getting my promotion at my job. Yeah. I had been at that job for a couple of months before, and I just got it, right? So I'm excited, I just got this new job, and then all of a sudden they come and they did a reorg, and they come and they're like, so we saw on your resume that, you know, you have marketing traffic position, you know, experience. Would you be interested in doing this? Because, you know, the whole team had changed. And so I was like, it's kind of like you can't say no, like, yeah, sure.
Essentially, so, like you're voluntold.
I'm voluntold,
to do
like,
job.
Hey, you're moving with me over here.
Yeah.
So, but that was a perfect opportunity. So I moved over, and my manager at the time, me and her pretty much we inherited a team that needed a lot of growth. Like there was so many opportunities for that team to be better, but it took a lot. Another reorg happens, and I was probably in that position for about, it wasn't even a year yet. It was super shy of a year, maybe 9 months. And my manager takes me out, and she was like, she got a promotion, so she was moving to VP, and she wanted me, the new girl who had not been at this company yet for a whole year, had already had 2 positions in that time period, and now she wanted to promote me. And that was like, wow, but that was all because during that 9 months that me and her were working together, I was grinding for her, you know, like I was making connections with other people. I made myself so invaluable because I knew all of the things to build the platforms that we were building, and all of the nuances about the teams. Like I was her go-to. So I kind of put myself unknowingly, I guess, but still kind of intentionally in a position where I was the only choice to get the promotion.
I love that.
Yeah.
And like you said, being intentional for you was just not necessarily knowing what you were going to get on the other side, just knowing you needed to show up and you needed to serve.
Yep.
Was this on the back end of, like you said, I was a typical millennial, and I wanted to get into that. I was like, oh, let me not change the subject right now, because I just had a conversation with someone, and so I literally just had a conversation with someone, and they were giving the advice, like, you know, you don't want to hop around. It looks crazy on your resume.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, I think that advice might be a little dated.
I think
because
it
I
is.
think that you can, like, there are very many situations where you can literally like change jobs and people still know your value.
Yes.
What was that like for you? Like, did you always get a job before you left, or were there ever times where you quit and then you got another one?
I always had another job lined up before I left. Always. I made, because I was very intentional and strategic in that way. I didn't want to just have a period where I didn't have any income coming in, because I've been living on my own. You got obligations. Like, I didn't want to have that kind of period. So I always made sure I had something else. And every time I left a job, because again of my intentionality of really becoming invaluable, they always wanted me to stay. They always tried to do the counter offer. Well, but I never take the counter offer. I was like, I'm leaving for a reason. It's deeper than that. But I do think that is a little dated. But I will say, when I interviewed for this job, I interviewed with the senior vice president of marketing at the time, and she asked me about that. She was she was older, and she asked me, she said, we noticed that you have had different moves, and you haven't stayed, why? But because I was, again, being strategic with my career, I could talk to my why. I wasn't just jumping just because, I was jumping because it was a better opportunity, or I wanted to get more experience in this area. When I tell you my marketing experience goes from, like I said, Kaiser Permanente, healthcare, to cybersecurity, to car insurance. Like, I have pest control. Like,
you've been in
I think that helped to ease their minds when they hired me.
I think that's real. And I also think it's real for you to say, like, of course there's something, not so tasteful or negative that triggers, like, the feelings. I think that's also important for you to figure out where you're supposed to go. Like, not only do you need to figure out what do I like and who do I like and what do I like to do, it's also, like, some of the things that I know most about myself came from me knowing, like, listen, this is not what I want to do.
Yes.
So for you, when you think about the moves that you left, were they all in a similar theme, or did you learn something that you didn't like at different roles? It
was always something... It was something new, something different always kind of triggered it. One was, I had a manager that was in competition with me. And so that causes conflict. There was another time where I had kind of saw that there was no growth for me, there was no upward mobility, and so that was a trigger. There was one where I felt like my manager didn't appreciate you know, what I had to offer. So I got to take my talent somewhere else. Okay, cool. You know, like, and so that triggered something. So it was me learning to understand that I like to feel valued. I like to feel appreciated. And I want that to also be reflected in my pay. Because there was my very, very first job out of college. I hated it. I really did. Because it wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't even really marketing. I was like an account coordinator. So it was kind of marketing, but not really. But I remember the day that my manager comes, she pulls me in her office and she's so excited, right? And she was like, we got you a raise, you know, like we're so excited. She's like, it wasn't, you know, we couldn't get a whole lot, but I really just wanted to show you how much I appreciate you. That raise, I kid you not, $1.
You got to be kidding me. $1 an hour?
$1 an hour. She gave, that was my raise.
Okay, this was back, when was this?
This was 2012.
Okay, so you, Lord, an hour? I mean $1?
$1. So my dollar an hour, like my pay went up $1. And she's beaming at me like I'm supposed to just be so appreciative. I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, but in that moment I knew, because I had been busting my butt for that company. I had one of the largest accounts, and that was their, you know, way of
appreciation.
Yeah. And that's what really, you know, that stuck with me for a while, because I feel like that is what helped me to want to negotiate more for my pay.
I also think, like, since that was one of your earlier job experiences, we start to, depending on the situation, let's say you get buttered up your entire career, so you never ask for more, right?
Yeah.
But when you kind of get undercut the first time, you know you have to challenge every situation moving forward.
Yeah, and it's uncomfortable. You know, that's something that I had to grow into also, is feeling, you know, like comfortable having those conversations and you know, fighting for myself.
Yeah.
That was something that I had to learn, and that came with, you know, the confidence rather came over time, but that was tough.
Yeah.
That was a tough one.
Speaking of confidence, so you've built your marketing career over so many years, right?
Yeah.
Even from college. And I'm thinking, you know, was there ever a point that you thought, you know what, marketing is just not a good fit? Or did you ever get discouraged on the path to where you are now?
I can't say it was never not marketing, but it was maybe not this type of marketing.
Okay.
So when I first started, I worked for a cybersecurity company, and I was doing field marketing. And field marketing was pretty much just like your sales support, essentially. And I got to travel, so I was traveling, but I didn't like it. I actually didn't like it.
That's usually like, oh, I get to travel. That's usually like the pinnacle.
I thought that too. I was like, you know, I'm traveling, I'm going to New York, I'm going to California, I'm going to all these places. And I thought that was fun, but it wasn't, because for me, like, I was traveling either by myself or with some colleagues, you know, but you know, you're not traveling with friends, you're not doing it for vacation, you're not on leisure. So, and it was in and out a lot of times too. So, and then constantly flying, it wasn't as much fun. I thought that's what I wanted until I got it. So that's happened sometimes. You got to get it and experience it, and then you realize this isn't exactly what I thought. So for me, I can't say it was never, okay, I'm gonna do something different with marketing, but I realized there's certain aspects of marketing that wasn't necessarily my niche, and I wanted to do something different.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love to hear your career journey, and I really like to hear, like, just, you know, the steps that you've learned about yourself without getting burned, without like the huge, and then also with, like, you know, catches. The millennial way is definitely more of a safe way to, like, go to another road, not take the hard bumps and bruises. But with entrepreneurship, it's a completely different thing, right?
Yes.
So, like, and the way you your brand taps into the woman experience, it's like you kind of know what she needs, right? So as you were, like, developing your brand and, like, figuring out, you know, how to take this to market, what was one of the most challenging things you did come across?
Oh, man. You know, it's funny. I tell people all the time, it's so hard for me to market myself, my own brand. I'm so in it that it's actually very difficult for me. I can talk to someone else and spit out 10 ideas easy. When I'm by myself and I'm doing my own thing, I'm struggling, but it's because I'm too in the weeds. So I actually rely a lot on my marketing friends who help me a lot to bounce ideas and to strategize with, because I'm too into it, because I'm thinking now, you know, it's balancing operations and finance, account, you know, like all those things, and marketing, you know, like I was like, I can't do it. It's the weirdest thing. It's so hard. So I think for me, one of the challenges was kind of letting go of that and being okay with the fact that even though I am a marketer and that's my strong suit, being okay with understanding that that's not what I can apply to my business, even though it has helped with the foundation. Like, I think the reason why the brand resonates with people is because I have that marketing intention behind it and building it. But when it comes to now, where I'm like, I don't know, like, should I do this digital ad, or what do you think? Like, my friends they'll give me more like advice. I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. Why didn't I think of that? You know, but it's because I'm in it. You're zoned in. Yeah.
I can imagine. One, it's like a surgeon cannot be his own surgeon.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So you can't operate on yourself.
Yes.
So I get that. And then it's also like talking yourself up to like doing something cool. Do you ever get like in your head about doing something new or something that like may or may not work?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I'm constantly thinking about things that I want to do and how I want to expand this brand and all these, like, I have a zillion ideas of things that I want to do and how I want this brand to grow. But for me, it's been, the challenge is like anchoring in. And I have this, one of my favorite acronyms is FOCUS, follow one course until successful.
Let's go.
Yeah.
I like that.
So trying to like anchor in on something, focus on that one thing, and then having the discipline, you know, to focus in and not want to do all the other ideas, and to just strategically add them on over time. That's probably the hardest thing, because I'm like, oh, I just want to, and it's like, wait, it's not the time.
New idea.
Yes.
We call it squirrel syndrome. So
yes.
you're like,
I'm like, squirrel.
I've been there. Promise you, focusing on one thing has saved me in my business. Yeah. So I'm thinking like you're happy in both your role and in your job, which is the beauty of it, right? You've never had to like run from something. You've always run to something. So in your current process, are you creating an exit strategy, or how are you planning that transition to go into this next evolution?
Yes. You know, I have to say, like, I love what I do. I will always love marketing, but I am at a place right now where it's still leaving me with the void. I'm not fulfilling something. And because of that, it's just kind of expedited that exit plan a little bit, because I've always said I'm really big on affirmations. Have you seen Mary Jane, being Mary Jane?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You know I got my stickers.
Yes. I'm so her. Oh my gosh, I have sticky notes like all over. So
yes.
One of which says that I plan to retire from corporate, and I use that word very intentionally. I'm not quitting. I'm retired. I'm going to throw myself a retirement party. Like, I'm having a retirement, because I have worked a long time. So this isn't me just like quitting. This is like I'm retiring and transitioning to something else. And so my goal was, I want to retire no later than 35. That is written on a sticky note. It has been there for years. Like, that is the goal. That was always my, like, that's the deadline. But here I am, 31, and I'm like, man, I don't think I can do this for another 3-4 years. Like, now I need to be a little bit more intentional on expediting that. So for me, it's like, okay, because we live in the city. Like, I wish I could just hit the lotto and make that a lot easier. But
mortgage would be taken care of.
Like, we can pay that. That's done. So, but until then, for me right now, it's okay. You do have a mortgage. You do have these obligations. So how much do you need to live?
Yes.
Because I know I've been able to take this business and do really well with it, doing it part-time essentially. Yeah. But if I give myself 6 months, can I really tap in? Like, how far can I grow this thing if it's my full-time, focus?
Yeah.
I want to get to that. So my goal is, how much do I need to save? How much do I need to take, when I'm building this business? Like, how much do I need to have on the back end? And however that money comes, right? Now I'm getting a lot more creative with how to get that. But now it's like, okay, knowing what that number is and being able to say that's the goal and how long is it going to take me to get there. Maybe it means sacrificing a little bit more, so I can't go on all my vacations I want to go on, but it's because I know that my goal is to retire from this job. I'm trying to exit out. So now, you know, I have that idea, I have that plan, and that's helping me to kind of, you know, get the ball rolling and get out of there sooner.
One of the other motifs that you've shared in your story is that there's always something next for you to do, right? So of course there's her, right? When you envision what you're going to, right, the vision, what is it that you're creating the exit strategy for?
I see myself being able to have the freedom and the ability to live the life I want to live. And I know that sounds super like cliche and broad, but in my mind, I see myself being able to have several businesses. I want to become an angel investor, honestly. I want to be able to help other women who are struggling like me right now, looking for funding and being able to scale their business. I want to be able to help those women and fund them, you know, before they get to the process of being fundable, you know, like, because my business right now, like, when investors look at it, it's still so new, and you know, and I'm doing it part-time, so the scale isn't there yet. I want to be able to help women, to help them fund their businesses early on in that process, so they can cut the ties and retire from their jobs and focus on their passions, right? So for me, when I think about the future and the vision, it is me being able to have the time to mentor, me being able to have the time to manage, you know, multiple businesses. Hers is honestly just the first one. The goal is for this one to help fund the others that I have in the back burner that I want to build up. So the goal is to have that, and then have the freedom to travel, have a family, you know, like I want to be able to, I was really fortunate. My mom was a homemaker when I was growing up. So I grew up having my mom pick us up from school and having dinner at a certain time every day. And while it was so annoying when I was younger, because like my friends, their parents weren't home, so they got to, you know, do stuff.
Do whatever they want.
I was like, man, my mom's home. But I appreciate it as an adult now, and I want to be that for my kids, but also have, you know, my empire also. So,
When you say an angel investor, you know, the way, you know, angel investors, of course, are monetary, but the way that you express your vision, it's like being able to invest not only just monetarily, but invest in the person, the women. It's kind of like how you built your brand around the women who actually are, you know, girls' night out or in their feelings, and they have a heart, they have a life. So you being able to invest time. And mentorship is what you mentioned. I think that's actually really, really beautiful. Like, because you're not just, you know, the vacation and living life. And as millennials, we are oftentimes pegged as selfish. But for you to, like, part of your vision to be to invest in others, that's when they get it twisted. Right?
Yes, that's so true. You have to, it's a good balance, right? And I will say, I am a huge advocate for people being more selfish. I think sometimes we have this, it has a negative connotation to it, but the idea is prioritizing self. You can't pour from an empty cup. We hear it all the time. And I have experienced burnout throughout my career several times. And so going through that now, it allows me to understand that I need to prioritize my time. And even in corporate, like I have had to set boundaries even with my corporate job, where it's like after a certain time I'm not available because I've experienced that burnout. I've been where it's just like overwhelming, and it's like, okay, you get to a point where it's like it's either me or them, right? And so for me, finding that balance that we talk about, that non-existent thing, but it starts with creating boundaries and creating those cutoff points and saying like, this is the time for you, and then I'm moving on to do whatever, you know. I could just sit on my couch all day, but I have to cut a tie there at some point. So I think you have to have a little bit of both.
Absolutely. How would you characterize your purpose in this moment?
I would say that that's such a great question. I feel like my purpose right now is twofold. One, like I mentioned, I'm in the business of making people feel good, but my purpose really is tied to wanting to inspire and help other women to be unapologetically happy and to pursue their passions. Like, to help women understand that there's always going to be fear. Yeah. There's always going to be something that holds you back, but there's ways, creative ways for you to still get to what you want, you know? I'm doing it different. I didn't take the complete, chop and just quit my job and just go straight into it and just hope for the best. Like, I commend people who I mean, oh my gosh, the bravery and the courage. I get it. Because sometimes I tell people, like, it could be kind of viewed as the cowardly way to kind of do it in a more, strategic, like, small
I see it as
increments.
You just know yourself. You know what I mean? Like, when you know yourself, there's no right or wrong. When you're living your life in your purpose, there's no right or wrong. Like, everything has its purpose. And while there's a huge structure with 50,000 people working in it, that there is purpose in there.
That's true.
Right? So I think that, courage, bravery, persistence, patience, these values show up in different ways. I used to look at women and men who stayed in corporate for 10 years and dang, why couldn't I do that? You know what I mean? Like, and want to have other values, like, just the value that I would think of that I would, like, wish I had was, like, just being able to be committed to something. Right? Yeah. And I thought because I didn't stay at a corporation, I wasn't committed. Yeah. And I said, you know what, girl, you've committed to so much in your life, personal, professional, and as an entrepreneur, committing to a journey. Yes. Right? But then also being able to realize that is commitment.
It is.
You have, like the fact that you've been in your career for 10 years. Listen, honey, when you're ready to do whatever marketing wise, just like, listen, I got this whole 10-year like foundation behind me. I think that we all, like, our values show up in however they show up. So I think it's a strategic route, not a scare route, not a safe route. And then I think the people who leave, that could be a brave route. Everybody has their values.
That's true.
So on your purpose, as we're thinking about it, in the same conversation, empowering women, inspiring women is where we are now. Can you think of a time where, like, your purpose showed up? Like, now that you look, if you look back in hindsight is 2020.
Hindsight is 2020. So,
girl, when was a time when, like, your purpose showed up? Can you remember a time where you're like, now that I think about it, that was probably my purpose?
Man, I would say that it shows up in different ways, but more recently, I think when my friends kind of come to me and they're asking me for advice on how can they, should they pursue a certain purpose or passion that they have. Like, when people start to come to you and want to confide in you or even value your opinion enough to want, to help them to decide their trajectory of their life, like, that was major. And so for me, I think those are the moments when I feel like, oh my gosh, like, this is happening. Like, it's so weird. Like, in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Someone's asking me. And then I'm like, focus, Nicole. They're asking you a question.
Listen, I think, our girlfriends, right?
Yes.
And how Joan is always like, oh my God. And then she goes into the conversation. Girl, I'm the same way. I'm like, oh my God. No, focus.
Focus. Yes.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So I think when I have those moments where people come up, or even now with the wine business, I have had the opportunity to meet so many women. One in particular. So it was Valentine's Day weekend. I was at the New Black Wall Street. They had a sip and shop for Valentine's Day for that weekend. And I had this woman come up to me and she was like, oh my gosh, like, this is so great. Like, I've been wanting to do a wine brand too. Like, and she was like, but I don't know if people are gonna like it. She was just telling me all her doubts. And mind you, right, like, I probably spoke to 1,000 people that weekend. It was so many people, but I wanted to stop and just talk to her and pour into her. And I was like, do it. Go for it. You know what I mean? Like, it's scary. It's always going to be scary. But the scary thing is not knowing. If you don't try, you're never going to know. You're always going to be wondering, like, what if I would have tried it? So, just being able to have that moment and talk to her and her to leave saying, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I was like, yay, like, that made that event so much more impactful. Besides all the sales, like, for some reason that moment stuck to me because I was able to hopefully, you know, inspire her to continue her journey. She left so motivated, you know, and just like ready to take it on. And I'm like, go for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As we listen to your story, you've had mom, dad, neighbors, like who have poured into you and shown you different ways. Yeah. For there to be someone like you who's done the brand already, who's doing a pop-up shop, right? Not just sticking on Instagram and digital sites. You're actually going up there and talking to humans saying, hey, here's my product. This is like, you're doing what a lot of people dream about. Listen, girl, I didn't even think about, I've never thought about creating a wine brand, but I don't know if I would have gone to Google and found a distillery and these things, which is really impressive.
Thank you.
Yes, you have inspired me, and then I know you've inspired folks who've listened to your story. Honestly and truly, I think we're going to have a wave of black girls who are like growing up. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to make a wine. You know what I mean? And first of all, you're like, what do you know about wine, little girl? But for them to be able to say that, that's impact.
Yes.
So let's speak it.
I love that.
Absolutely.
I love that. Yeah.
I have enjoyed your story. I have one more question.
Yes.
Because I can ask you questions all day. And I've been sipping on the wine a little bit. So, guys, I have really enjoyed it. But there is someone who does need to be poured into right now. Listen, no pun intended.
Yeah.
So,
I love it.
But for you to think about like that woman who you know that you were once, right?
Yeah.
Who needed someone to pour into them. If you think about it, what would you say to that woman, and who would she be to get her, you know, to take just one more step?
You know, I would tell her, if you are having doubts, if you're trying to figure out like what is that thing, I would tell you to take the leap. It's scary. You know, there's a lot of doubt, self-doubt that comes into it, but to trust your heart. If you have the thought, that means that God planted it inside of you, and that it can't go wrong, but you won't know until you try. Yeah. That's the biggest thing. I feel like we have an infinite amount of time on this planet, and it's very important for us to live our life intentionally, deliberately. And so with that, sometimes you gotta, you know, try it. You can't, the only thing that you're failing at is not trying. That's the biggest thing.
Nice little wrapped up with a bow. The only thing that you fail at is not trying.
Yep.
I love that. So thank you. Thank you, Nicole, for joining me on the podcast. And thank you guys for watching and for listening. Listen, if you guys loved her story, you want to get connected with her, and you want to drink some of her wines, how can they get connected with you? How can they watch your journey? And then how can they support?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So you guys can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. It's Her Wine, and our website is herwines.com. Definitely follow me on Instagram. I'm super engaged. I love talking to people. We have events that we curate, as well as pop-up shops. I love meeting you guys and meeting people and talking about the brand and just saying hello. So definitely follow us, see where we're going to be at, and definitely get a bottle. It's good.
Let's go. Enjoy you guys' night, and hopefully you're watching this over a bottle of Her Wines. But until next time, I will see you guys next week. Peace out.